भाई जय हो बड़े देव बुढ़ा देवता की छत्रपति देवता। हाय धरती माता ठाकुर देव बाबा शेरो माई। हाथ भाई तीर लोक 33 कोट के देवता हो। कह बावन गढ़ के देत नल मैं सुमराई। कहत भाई देखो कहत धरती पृथ्वी 8 खंड धरती 9 खंड पृथ्वी। कह जे में वास करे हुन देवता। हाथ भाई कौन रे देवता के चर्चा कहो या संध्या दिन।
The great modern artist and thinker J.Swaminathan was of the view that we must not confine ourselves to the art created in cities. The British had etched a poor image of the so-called savage mind in our metropolitan thinking, based on the tribal's music, dance and art. But Swami believed that the traditional folk and tribal arts, as practiced in the rural areas of India, were no less significant. He put them in the same league as contemporary art. He was of the firm belief that the very concept of looking at man and art from a Western perspective was wrong.
Now, this question that why tribals were, why this museum and why tribal painting was brought into almost all the center of the modern painting scene of India, I think the driving force for that was J.Swaminathan's vision of India. And I do think that, there are many images that we have of India now. Swami's image of India was that there is a multiple ways of living and creativity and creating happen in India at the same moment. So therefore he brought in this concept of contemporaneity rather than modernity. He says everyone who is creating or who is painting or sculpting, whether in cities or in the tribal domains or otherwise, they should all be seen as contemporary artists. He came with this vision to Madhya Pradesh, and I must say that government of Madhya Pradesh at that time did not ask J.Swaminathan to make a museum of this kind. Swami proposed a museum of this kind to government of Madhya Pradesh, which government agreed, must have agreed, otherwise there would have been no Bharat Bhavan. Now, another important thing was that Swami was very motivated by this idea that because of the superiority of the technology, the West has also claimed the superiority in the art also. And he said that we should be able to separate the two. The technological superiority is one thing, but the cultural enrichment is another thing. And these ideas, if I am not wrong, they were there in Swami's mind from, I think, some 15-20 years before he came to Bharat Bhavan. So therefore it was Swami's vision to have that. Now, for government to have used this as something to its own advantage might be true, and but to say that it was done for that sake, I am afraid that I will not agree to that.
Once Bharat Bhavan was established in Bhopal in 1982, Swaminathan decided to give an official form to this idea and sent out a number of teams of young artists into the Madhya Pradesh countryside. Their primary aim was to collect examples of the craft of painting or any form of design being practiced there. He wanted to display these together with the metropolitan forms of art. Bharat Bhavan Museum was the result of this very concept. Swami believed that it was essential to get rid of the intellectual slavery to the British.
तो लंबे समय बाद पाटन आना हुआ और जब मैं पाटन में प्रवेश कर रहा था तो मुझे कुछ पुरानी यादें, जब मैं यहाँ पहली बार कलेक्शन के लिए आया था तो उस समय की बहुत सारी यादें मेरे सामने आके खड़ी हो रही थी। हमको भारत भवन में जब ये तय हुआ था कि वहाँ एक रूपंकर कला संग्रह बनाया गया है जिसमें देवनाग अपना नागरिक कलाकार और फोक एवं आदिवासी कलाकार उसमें हिस्सा लें और उनकी एक सम्मिलित संग्रहालय जैसा बने, तो इस विचारधारा के स्वामी जी ने कुछ ऐसे ग्रुप्स बनाए थे जो इंटीरियर में जाके कलाकृतियों का संग्रह करने वाले थे। उसमें मैं था, एक ग्रुप का लीडर यूसुफ था, एक ग्रुप की लीडर जया थी जो मेरी पत्नी थी, और एक ग्रुप के लीडर रामजी वर्मा थे। इसके अलावा एक ग्रुप के लीडर राजेंद्र घोड़पकर भी थे। मेरे को जो है वो छिंदवाड़ा, बैतूल और मंडला ज़िला मेरे को मिला था। यूसुफ को बिलासपुर और सरगुजा मिला था। जया को पूरा बस्तर ज़िला मिला था और पूरा मालवा जो है वो रामजी वर्मा को दिया गया था, क्योंकि रामजी वर्मा क्योंकि इंदौर से ताल्लुक़ रखते थे और मालवा से बहुत परिचित थे, इसलिए ये जिम्मेदारी उनको दी गई थी। तो मैं जब यहाँ आया तो हम लोगों का एक बीच में स्वामी जी ने कुछ लोगों के साथ, एक्सपर्ट लोगों के साथ जो मतलब नेतृत्व शास्त्री भी थे और कुछ सामाजिक इसके ऊपर भी काम कर रहे थे, तो उनसे हमारा एक इंटरेक्शन करवा के स्वामी जी ने हमको इस बात का बहुत स्पष्ट वो दिया था कि हम लोग सभी चित्रकार थे और इस एक तरह से यूँ कीजिए कि हमें इसकी बाकायदा ट्रेनिंग वगैरह दी गई थी। तो हमसे कहीं ये गलती ना हो कि हम जब इन चित्रकारों के पास जाएं, आदिवासी लोक कलाकारों के, तो हम उन्हें गाइड करने की या किसी तरह से दबाव में कुछ कलाकृतियों का सृजन करने की बात ना करें। कोशिश हमारी ये हो कि वो जो भी जैसा भी कर रहे हैं हम वैसे के वैसे ही, अगर हमको पसंद आ रहा है तो हम उनसे वो कलाकृतियाँ लें, उनका उचित मुआवजा उनको दें और वो वैसे के वैसे ही हम भारत भवन में लेके आएँ।
Vivek, an artist, was a member of the team touring the Mandala region. The team would visit the villages in the area and collect examples of their arts and crafts. In the course of their tour, they also visited the village of Patangarh near Gadasarai on the road heading from Tindori Tehsil to Amarkantak. British anthropologist Verrier Elwin had at one time lived in that village. Patangarh is spread over 3 or 4 hillocks, but Vivek's team could not find any art or craft there. As the evening set in, they were preparing to return, disappointed, when they noticed on a wall a remarkable, gleaming yellow Hanuman carrying the Sanjeevani hill in his hands. Inquiries revealed that this was the creation of a boy called Jangar Singh Shah. Jangar belonged to a Pardhan family who are traditionally musicians, not artists. Apart from drawing pictures, Jangar also liked to play the flute. This boy, who belonged to a singer-balladeer family, now left Patangarh, arrived in Bhopal and entered the world of colours.
Now, Jangar Singh Shah is a very special case in the history of art in India, in a sense that Jangar belonged to a family of musicians actually. And you know that in India, almost all the big communities or even the smaller communities have their own storytellers. They have their own carriers of the collective memory as if. So Jangar belonged to Pardhan sub-tribe of the Gond tribe. And the Pardhans are like, these are carriers of the collective memory, and they sing and narrate that that memory. They evoke the memory in the community, but through words, through music. But then they were patronized by the society and by the Gond society. But then gradually the Gond society itself became very impoverished. So finally their art of singing and playing on bana, which is an instrument like sarangi, that was all gradually was going down and was very little was left. At that point, Jangar, instead of going into the longer history of his discovery and all that, if we come directly to the point, it is that Jangar got a chance to paint, and suddenly all that which was there in his being of the narrations, it got transformed into painting, which in a sense suggests that arts have a meta language which transcends all arts and which addresses all art. There is one language of that. So anyway, then he started painting, and once he started, obviously he was painting that whole memory, the gods and goddesses and all, and the narrative of his area and the Gond community and all, and he started painting. Now something wonderful was happening. First time perhaps in the history of modern art that the musician tradition was getting transformed into painting. And obviously because of the great support of institutional support of Bharat Bhavan and individually of Jagdish Swaminathan, the great painter, he flourished. His painting also flowered, his creativity also flowered. It got a chance to realize itself. And suddenly you know that he suddenly became very important painter, not only quote unquote tribal, but as a painter in our times. And then of course he exhibited all over the world in many countries in very short duration of time. And a time came when he started going abroad also to paint. Not only his paintings were going, but he himself was also going. At the same time, in these years, he was also very supportive of his community. So lots of people from Pardhan tradition were coming and staying with him, and were in fact, I normally think that his house was like a maternity home for the upcoming Pardhan artist or the Jangar Kalam artist. And a lot of them grew there, flowered there, learned the art of painting there. And he was also very supportive of the village that he came from, which coincidentally is the village where Varya Alvin stayed. When his fame grew, at the same time there are other painters also in the country. Fame was also growing. Now he was invited at the last, what proved to be his last, to Japan. And in Japan he was working for an art gallery and worked for very long. And as far as I gather, my understanding of it is that of course he didn't leave any suicide note, but the letters preceding his suicide suggest, very tangentially of course, that there was a big force, there was a pressure on him to stay over. His passport was, I think, taken by the gallery, and or it made an impression on him by the gallery. Gallery made an impression of him as if his passport will not work. He'll not be able to go back to India for a certain duration of time. I think that pressure was very high, and you must understand that it was just 10-15 years of artistic practice to be living in the art world, and suddenly he's finding himself in such a situation. Now he couldn't take that pressure. Of course, I do think that the Japanese gallery should have understood him. If they understood the vitality of his work of art, that it's coming from a certain tradition, they should also have understood the vulnerability of an artist of this kind. that he comes from a small village, he comes from a tribal community. It is not as if the gallery was not aware of the tribal living in India, and if they were not aware, they should have been aware. Anyway, so the pressure was very high on him, and I think that led to the suicide. So to say that gallery had no role to play in his suicide, I think is an understatement. It's very important that we must understand that the tribals going abroad, they had a very little exposure of the transactional world that the modern world has become. So he couldn't take it, and as a result, he took the other way of coming back to his country, came back to his country without his body.
In 1989, when he was only 27, Jangar had this opportunity to show his work at a prestigious exhibition titled Magicians of the Earth in Paris. He was there among eminent names such as Louise Bourgeois, Nam June Paik and Marina Abramovich. Poet and art scholar Udayan Vajpayee is right when he says that, in a way, Jangar Kalam is both the depiction of a narrative and also represents the Pardhan's grief over their inability to sing the narrative. It is both a new form of the narrative and a parting elegy to its old form, the music.
ओ मूर्छा मंत्री सिट्टा महंगुआ कहा थे भाई, कहा हीरागढ़ के राजा हीरा खान छत्री, कहा थे भाई बैरागढ़ के राजा कहा मारा खान छत्री। ऐसे संसार राज करते हो राजे का हो राजा गो राजा।
Jangar Singh Shyam was the first painter of the Jangar Kalam. Actually, he started this new style of painting, which is very new in the world. Basically, he was a musician. There is a story about 7 brothers of Gond community, and he was born outside the house in the para, near the field. So he has been called Pardhan. So all other brothers, they never accepted his being that, he is not our brother, he is someone else coming from outside. So Badadev came and said, he is your younger brother and all of you will take care of him, and he will sing song for me, in praise of me, and all in all the rituals of Gonds, he will be the singer. So Jangar Singh Shyam was basically a musician turned into a painter. The song he used to sing, these songs were describing the gods and goddesses of Gond community. So Jangar Singh Shyam started making them on paper. Initially on terracottas. So we have got many of his terracottas in our collection, and then he started painting also. And he was a genius guy, so he painted most of all the deities of Gond community. And his style was so unique and so different from the other painters, from the other tribal painters, that the all Gond community started copying him. And at one time at Jangar's house, most of the young boys, those who were becoming young, and they were coming directly to Jangar and living with him. So Jangar started teaching them how to paint and how to draw, and later they all became painter. So that is how this Jangar Singh Shyam started a new style of painting, which has been spread in his community. And now I found that many of the young artists in Rajasthan, many of the young artists in Tamil Nadu, they have also picked up some elements of Jangar Kalam. And in Patangarh and in Mandla itself, there are many other people, young artists, they are also doing in the same kind of painting, doing the same kind of painting, Jangal Kalam, but they are not gone, they are not tribals, they belong to different communities and they belong to different, they are mainly, from the villages.
I rate him very highly, Vinod, because what Swami thought about tribal art and contemporary and modern art, to put them together at Bharat Bhavan at one time, only Jangar has proved that. Bhuribai is also there, but Bhuribai remains a tribal artist with some very good works, but Jangar is an artist who has proved it. Like I can say, when his show was held in Pompidou Center, like Harpidas Singh's works were there, that was, I think, enough to see for the world that what Swami thought, Jangar has proved that. Swami always had in mind that he would put all these works of tribal artists along with the modern and contemporary artists at Bharat Bhavan, Rupankar. But then there was a discussion to which I have known it from close quarters, because at that time I used to go to Bhopal for the meetings. I was also in the advisory committee, and I travelled with Swaminathan for about 15 days in tribal areas. Akbar Padamsi was also with us for a week or so. So Swami would talk at times at length that what he has in mind, and he has this in mind, that these artists who are working, because he has given them papers and colors. Earlier they were not doing works like that. So he somewhere knew it. He had a very confidence, the very confidence in all these artists, that they have talent, they have merit, the way they use colors, the forms, and when they will use these modern materials, they would produce something which would be of very high order.
At that point in time, no one had any inkling that within a short span of time, Jangar would transform the musical tradition of Pardhans into painting and develop a new language of art. What was being sung for centuries found a new and colourful form in the shape of Gond gods and goddesses, trees and plants, rivers and waterfalls. Art scholars generally consider this Jangar style as a pictorial form of music and storytelling. Jangar and his wife, Nankusya, opened an entirely new avenue of art for the Pardhan youth. An art journey that started from the riverfront of Patangarh populated a new world of art in Bhopal, thanks to Swaminathan's amazing inspiration. It is not surprising, therefore, that for these youth, Swami was no less than a god.
हमारे लिए तो स्वामीनाथन एक भगवान है और एक हमारे लिए एक पूरा हमारी जिंदगी लाइफ बनाने वाले इंसान था वो.
Jangar Singh Sham's death in Japan at the young age of 39 will continue to remain a mystery. Jangar had an opportunity to work, make a name for himself, and earn a lucrative amount in a prosperous and developed country. But he could not come to terms with his so-called success for long. If it was suicide, then was it that the talent which played the flute in the Patangarh landscape could not bear the solitude stemming from the pressures of the museums and the art bazaar? Thanks to the inspiring example of Jangar Singh Sham, a new generation of tribal artists is coming to the fore and seeking stardom. A second generation of highly gifted Gond and Pardhan artists have found their own unique voices. Some of these brilliant young artists work within the ritualistic practice of the Gond art tradition. They are now finding recognition under their own signatures. Bhajju Shyam, Venkatraman Singh Shyam, son of Jangar Mayank Shyam, and Durgabai are well-known names in their own right.
कहा थे भैया देखो आज कहा थे भाई धरती पृथ्वी रे, आठ खंड धरती नौ खंड पृथ्वी सवा लाख वनस्पति कहे बनाए देता.
The London Jungle Book of Bhajju Shyam is a great international achievement. Critics like John Berger called it a beautiful book. It's one of those gorgeous books and stories that makes a fascinating read for adults, a coffee table art book, and a children's book, Berger wrote.
कहा थे भाई कहा थे देखो कहे बावनगढ़ के.
जनगढ़ जी के साथ ऑलरेडी पहले से ही 3-4 आर्टिस्ट काम करते थे जो मेरे से सीनियर थे, वो कर रहे थे. तो उस समय मुझे नहीं लगा कि मैं कुछ कर पाऊँगा, क्या करूँगा, क्योंकि मैं रोज़गार की तलाश में आया था, मैं आर्टिस्ट बनने नहीं आया था. तो यहाँ मैं आने के बाद मैंने कुछ काम किए, चौकीदारी का काम किया, कुछ इलेक्ट्रीशियन का भी काम किया, कुछ मजदूरी की. लेकिन जब उनको मैं काम छूट गया मेरा, तो उन्होंने बुलाया कि तुम कलर भरना, जिसमें मैंने स्केच कर रखा है उसमें कलर भरना. तो वो कलर भर रहा था मैं, और कलर भरते भरते फिर साल 1.5 साल हो गया, और उसके बाद फिर उसका मैं डिटेलिंग करने लगा और उनको अच्छा लगने लगा. तो मुझे असिस्टेंट के नाम से वो कहीं भी ले जाया करते थे. और रही बात क्या सीखा, तो 2 साल के अंदर फिर जब मैं करने लगा तो उन्होंने बोला कि तुम अपने लिए कुछ काम करो. तो मेरे से शुरुआत में उनके जैसे ही काम बन रहे थे. तो वो बोले कि मेरा काम नहीं करना है, तुमको अपना एक डिज़ाइन निकालना है. तो मुझे आ ही नहीं रहा था. तो फिर धीरे धीरे करके मैं कुछ करने की कोशिश की.
ओ गोर राजा जो है कहा थे भाई राज करें, कहा थे भाई सतयुग में, कहा थे भाई आई गढ़ तुई गढ़ देव गढ़ जवाहर गढ़ सी गढ़ लांझी बावनगढ़ के राजा है रे. ओ कैसे राज करते संत राज गणवाना है राम. कहा था भाई भूखाला भोजन प्यासाला पानी जढ़ाला वस्त्र दई नहुर राजा. ओ बड़ा दयालु राजा रहे कहा थे भाई, भूखाला भोजन देवाए प्यासाला पानी जढ़ाला वस्त्र देवाए हुन राजा. ऐसे महाराणा प्रताप देता राज करे रे संसार में देता मोर. ओ सन्ने सिंहासन में बैठे राजा, दहरी पंखा दहरी चवर ढुरे राजा के. कहा थे भैया कहा देखो कहा पहले आखी चुनिया में दारू टंगे के टंगे सैरी के आगी नहीं बीता राजा मोर. ओ कहा थे राजा के दरबार में नेंगी जोगी पाड़े प्रधान करछुलपुरिया बैठे, करिया थैली के माखुर नहीं बढ़ावे, कहा सैरी के आगी नहीं बीतरे आकाश दिया बरथ है राजा मोर.
Bhajju made this London book. So if you see the paintings of London book, you can immediately understand that he has translated London into a Gond village. So, which means that he is not terrified by London. When he goes to London, he domesticates London. And you have to learn to domesticate the onslaught of modernity. And London Book is a wonderful document suggesting that how a tribal, very talented, tribal, vulnerable artist has outgrown that vulnerability and is now capable of domesticating the city like London. And you know that this London is the financial capital of the world. All big financial transactions of the world take place in the London. So he is able to domesticate London. He could see London as a Gaon Pradhan village. And I think when I saw that book, I was quite assured, that now Bhaju will be able to sustain that pressure. He'll be able to negotiate with this world. Which I think, if you see somebody like Bhuri Bai or some other Bhil artist, I still do not, believe that they'll be able to negotiate the modern market as efficiently as Bhaju is able to do.
Swami mentored artists like Jangar and Bhuri Bai, wrote about their art, supported them, and devoted time to encouraging them. Jangar brings a vibrance and a luminosity to his work all his own. There is a great power and promise in the work of this young artist, wrote Swami in a catalogue of an exhibition hosted by the Dhumimal Art Gallery in 1984. Initially, when Swami put up the proposal for an exhibition on Jangar before Ravi Jain, the gallery owner, the latter was a little circumspect. But in hindsight, it was a remarkable initiative.
Jangar was one of the most important artists, tribal artists. Bhuri Bai in an interview has said that Swaminathan was the one who really gave recognition to the Gond tribe, and he would see them paint on their house walls or even walls of Bharat Bhavan, and that is when he encouraged them to start drawing on paper or other surfaces. And 1984 was when Jangar had one of his first notable exhibitions, and for a tribal artist to be shown in a mainstream gallery at Dhumimal was at that time a big thing, but because of close proximity between my father, Mr. Ravi Jain, and J.Swaminathan, this show was made possible. It was path-breaking in the sense that at that time it got critical acclaim, but not the commercial success that Jangar has today after his show at KNMA or other such international museums. One of the most successful auction artists today, but that 1984 exhibition definitely started a trend towards tribal artists.
While writing his book, The Magical Script, on the drawings by the hill Korvas of Jashpur, Raigarh, now in Chhattisgarh, Swami wrote that the cultural experiences and activity in India were a multi-level phenomenon, where the levels were quite often mutually independent and non-interacting. It is the urban and the so-called modern sense of contemporaneity that appears to dominate the scene and thus to distort the real perspective. Although Swami often used the word tribal to refer to the indigenous communities of rural India in his writings and lectures, he recognized the pitfalls of the word and preferred the Hindi expression Adivasi. Many scholars today prefer to use the word non-metropolitan. Swami said in an interview to Giev Patel, "To the West, the lone individual image of the Adivasi is a lost, groping individual. To us, he is the arrived person." Bhuri Bai's journey of art is also full of amazing twists and turns. Coming from the Bhil region of Jhabua, which had no electricity, few roads and little water, Bhuri Bai would walk to nearby Dahor in Gujarat to sell firewood, or would earn 2 or 3 rupees a day working as a field labourer. Then she arrived in Bhopal looking for some work. The story of her meeting Swaminathan in Bhopal where she started to work as a daily wager, carrying bricks, mud and mortar while Bharat Bhavan was being built, eventually becoming a guest in the same Bharat Bhavan, travelling across India and abroad and getting many honours, and finally the Padma Shri is the stuff of legends.
स्वामीनाथन के बारे में तो बताने के लिए उनके बारे में तो बहुत है, क्योंकि मैं पहली बार गांव से आई थी, तब भारत भवन बन रहा था, तो मैं भारत भवन में उनसे मिली। पहले तो मेरी जान पहचान थी नहीं, मैं पहचानती नहीं थी, लेकिन मैं वहाँ मजदूरी कर रही थी और वहाँ के डायरेक्टर थे और ऐसे ही घूमते फिरते आते थे, रोज़ रोज़ आते पूछते, बोले आप कहाँ से हो, कौन समाज में हो। हमने बोला हम जिला झाबुआ से ही हैं, आदिवासी भील हैं। तो बोले भीलों में कैसे शादी होती है, कैसे किस देवी देवताओं को पूजा करते हैं। तो हमने बोला हम आपको कैसे समझाएं, हम हिंदी बोलना नहीं आता है और आपको हम कैसे समझाएं। तो कहने लगे, बोले नहीं नहीं आप बोले हमें बताने की कोशिश करें, हम समझेंगे। बोला हमको हिंदी बोलना नहीं आता है। फिर स्वामी जी के साथ में यूसुफ साहब थे और अखिलेश जी थे, ये सब लोग थे। तो वो कहने लगे, बोले नहीं आप बोलो, बोले आप क्या बोलने चाहते हो, हम समझाएंगे बोले साहब को। तो हमने बोला हम तो देव को मानते हैं, देवी का तो ज़्यादा पूजा करते ही नहीं है, और हमारे समाज में जैसे शादी होती है तो वो सब हमने उनको समझाया। तो कहने लगे, बोले हमें एक उसमें या कैनवास ला के देते हैं या फिर कागज़ रोल ला के देते हैं, आप बता के दिखाएं। तो हमको बना के दिखाओ। तो हमने बोला हम क्या बना के दिखाएं, हमको क्या आएंगे, हम बना के देंगे। ऐसा करके हम बोलने लगे। तो मेरी साथ में मुझे पहले बचपन से ही शौक़ था, अपने घर की दीवारों पे मिट्टी कलर ले लेती थी, खड़ी गेरू। जब त्यौहार आता था तो अपने घर की दीवारों को सजा लिया करती थी। शादी होने वाली थी तो मेरी माँ कहती थी, बोले अपने घर में शादी है तो शादी का घर लगना चाहिए, आपको आता है आप कुछ ना कुछ बना लो। तो मैं अपने मन से ही लेके बैठ जाती थी। कहीं पेड़ बना लिया, मोर बना लिया, घोड़ा बना लिया, ऐसा करके मैं अपने घर को बहुत अच्छे से बचपन से ही सजा लिया करती। तो मैंने कहा हमारे पास रंग नहीं है, कलर नहीं है, हम आपको कैसे बना के दिखाएं। सब ने बहुत सारी लेबर लगी थी, 100-150 लेबर लगी थी, सब लड़कियों ने मना कर दिया, बोले हमें तो आता ही नहीं है। तो मेरे साथ में मेरी बहन थी बड़ी वाली, तो बड़ी बहन ने बोला, बोले भूरी आपको तो आता ही है, आप तो अपने घर की दीवारों पे करती है, वैसे ही उनको करके दे दो बोले। तो मैंने कहा मैं काय से करके दो, मैं अपने हाथ के कलर बना के और मिट्टी कलर से लेके बना के और अपने घर की दीवारों को सजा लिया करती। तो कहने लगे नहीं नहीं हम आपको बाज़ार से ही कलर ला के दे रहे हैं और रंग कलर ब्रूस ला के दे रहे हैं, आप बना के दिखा। जिद करने लगे, जैसे आए ऐसे ही बना के दो बोले। तो मैंने कहा मैं आपको बना के दूँ तो मेरी हाज़िरी कौन देंगे, मैं तो यहाँ मजदूरी कर रही हूँ। तो कहने लगे, बोले आपको क्या हाज़िरी मिलती है यहाँ पर। तो उस समय 6 रुपये मिल रहे थे भारत भवन में, जब मजदूरी कर रहे थे 6 रुपये मिल रहे। बोले आपको 6 रुपये मिल रहे हैं, मैं आपको 10 रुपये दूंगा। मैंने कहा मेरे को 10 रुपये नहीं चाहिए, मेरे को 6 रुपये ही चाहिए। बोले अच्छा ठीक है आप बनाओ। उन्होंने रंग कलर ब्रूस मंगा लिया बाज़ार से और फिर कहने लगे, बोले चलो अब एक जो नीचे तल घर है वो बन गया था, अब टेबल कुर्सी पे बैठ के और आप बनाना बोले। मैंने कहा नहीं मेरे को डर लगता है, मैं वहाँ नहीं आऊँ, मैं अकेली वहाँ बैठ के नहीं बनाऊँगी। तो आप बताइए, बोले आप कहाँ बैठ के बनाओगे। तो उस समय जब वो मंदिर है अभी चट्टानों पे बना हुआ है, वो मंदिर के ओटले पे बैठ के मैंने पहले ही चित्र बना के दिया उनको कागज़ पे। उनको बहुत पसंद आया और बहुत अच्छा ही लगा। मैंने बोला ये मैंने बैलगाड़ी बनाई है, मैंने घोड़ा बनाया है, मोर बनाया है, ऐसे करके मैंने उनको समझाया तो उनको बहुत अच्छा ही लगा। मेरे से 5 दिन बनवाया उन्होंने और 5 दिन के मेरे को 50 रुपये दिए। तो मैंने कहा मैंने ऐसा क्या बना दिया, मेरे को बहुत सारे पैसे दे दिए। अब उस समय हम लोगों को बहुत सारे पैसे लगते थे।
And Bhuri Bhai is a very, very important example of how the Bhil art got transformed into once again a new kind of art. You see, the Bhil used to do the pithoras on the walls of the houses. It's a ritualistic painting. There is a Likhandara who would go on, there is a narrator who will go on telling the story, and then there is a Likhandara who goes on painting. And this is a story of a voyage of Kunwar Pithora to bring back the language and the laughter from the Himalayas. It's a long story, but anyway, this is a voyage. Lots of horses are going, and you just see the horses. You don't see the horse riders on that, but you presume that there are riders there. Now, it's a voyage, and what Bhuri Bhai did, that he took the horses and removed the voyage from that. Now these horses, in one of our paintings, very beautiful work, where the horses, you only see the horses, many horses together, without a linear perspective, they're all horizontally like this. Now these horses are now not going anywhere. They are only there, they are available to the pleasure of seeing, and they are much more open to the interpretation. So that transformation in Bhuri Bhai took place, and then Pithora painting were done only by the men. And now Bhuri Bhai, and there are more than Bhuri Bhai, more women than Bhuri Bhai, started doing that, and there is a distinct shift in the way that they paint. And all these transformations suggest one thing, and I think it's a very important thing, that the tribal painters, tribals in India, they are capable of doing multiple things at ease. They are not trained to specialize and thereby lose many of their faculties to act differently. They do not develop a tubular life. Their potential to do multiple things keeps alive in them. It's kept alive in them, so that given a chance, they can do work with the jute rassis, they can do work with the bamboos, they can paint, they can create music, they can do work on the metal. That means this whole demon of this specialization, which in the end helped the rulers and the capitalism, in fact, has not gone into tribal society as yet. Buckminster Fuller once says in his wonderful book, he says that specialization was done so that only few people will have a bigger perspective of the world. The rest will only be captivated in their specializations. Now, in tribals, this specialization has not yet happened. Therefore, Jangar Singh Sham starts from being a musician and becomes a painter. Bhuri Bhai starts from being a Bhil woman who has seen the different kind of Pithora painting being done, transforms that whole tradition into something else, which means that the potential to transform one's own skills and imagination, this potential is very high with the tribal societies, and I think this thing connects all three of these masters, whether it's Bhuri Bhai or Jangar Singh Sham or Bhaju.
In the 1990s, Swami broke away from his style involving geometric forms and his Bird Mountain series, setting aside the brush and the easel, and began to explore the use of symbols in tribal art, and applied pigments with his fingers as a way to achieve the desired effect, which was also notably a tribal approach. He delved deep into the lexicon of tribal artists. While Swami believed in a democratic fraternity of artists where a dialogue was possible between a metropolitan artist and a tribal artist, some artists and scholars tend to differ and see and interpret this relationship in a different way.
Actually, India has many tribal arts throughout the country, and I think that these works are, as visual artwork, we are impressed and we like them very much. But I don't know that whether we should display them side by side with the contemporary artists of this time. Since the tribal art has a particular attitude, they have a particular type of expression, their images and their subjects are also very different. I think it is much better if we display them separately with many other works of tribal artists. So then we can really feel and see them with their the quality they have got. So we should see them separately and in different exhibition hall.
In fact, regarding tribal and folk art, as a painter, what I have observed and what I think that it is a matter of identity. Actually, the painters, they in a community, they have got their own identity in the painting, the particular style they adopt, and more so that they maintain that style over the period of hundreds of years. So I think that the painting is a very dynamic kind of art process. For that matter, all the art forms are dynamic. They keep changing with the change of their life, change of the time. In our country, the problem is that our tribal and folk people, there are two aspects. The tribal and folk art, they exist with the tribal and folk life. And to that life, we have not added the facilities of transport, education, medical, and other things. What we did, we have always tried to encourage their art. I don't think that tribal art needs any patronage. No art needs any patronage for that matter, especially the patronage of the system. And what I feel that there is absolutely no relevance in comparing or talking in the terms of that is a contemporary art and that tribal art, they are all the same. No, they are not all the same. I believe that the destination of tribal art is the museum. If any community practices tribal art, it is only possible if they are living in a tribal life, which is not possible in 21st century. So any development happening in a country, it should reach to the last person of the living in the tribal areas. So they should be educated, and I think that if they get the education, they get the different, the development, the light of development. If that reaches those points, their art will bound to change. And I think that what contemporary or what the modern artists, they can take from tribal, the way we take from all other art form. If I am Indian, I can take from Picasso, irrespective of the fact that what kind of art he was doing. If I like, I can of course take it. In the same way, I can take it from any folk or tribal. And lastly, what I want to emphasize, that after the independence in India, after 47, what I see, what we have experienced, that every state, they tried to grab their own tribal art. Like Madhya Pradesh, they said that the Gond is our art. If you go to Maharashtra, they would say that this one, Warli is our tribal art or folk art. Same thing happening in Bihar, and such ridiculous. I mean, Bihar, when it was undivided Bihar, they had certain art form. We all know, Madhubani and few other art form. But then when it was divided, then again Jharkhand, they tried to identify their own art form. And for every state has got their tribal or their own folk art. It is not possible because the state limitations, the state boundaries are made by the government for their convenience. But a tribal art or the folk art, it cannot limit itself with the border designed by the government or the system. So this is, I don't think this is practical. Tribal art should not have any boundary. tribal art, if you see the tribal art, you can find in the Gond art, you can see the similarity with the Australian tribal art. Even if you see this polar people near Canada, what they do on their walls, it is very similar to what we do in Warli. So this kind of limitation, this kind of identification that the Gond belongs to Madhya Pradesh, it is, I don't think it is very scientific. It is not scientific. Ultimately, finally, we should focus on the improvement of life, improvement of quality of life of tribal people in a very creative way, not by giving them some few awards, few rewards and few Padma Shris. That is a very easy thing which you can do. But to take the light of development, knowledge to those areas is a difficult task and is a challenge. The government, they always attempt to take a shortcut, because what has reached to the tribal is our democratic and the polling system. They are now voters. So since they are voters, so we want to woo them by offering some awards, rewards and all this thing.
It's a very interesting subject, and during the course of action and during the course of interaction with the tribal communities in Madhya Pradesh, I have realized, and I now practice this understanding, that the discourse of tribal culture and tribal literature is very different from the mainstream literature which we have. For example, I interact with tribal Gond painters and other kinds of painting styles in Madhya Pradesh, and they say that our painting is not a painting or artistic piece of thing. It is a part of our lifestyle, and it is a part of a puja paddhati. So the way they take their religion, the way they respect the trees and they respect the water and respect their devatas in the tribal community, is actually how they paint, and they are the people who are actually doing a religious work when they are painting. You find the purity of art in tribal culture because of this feeling, and they relate to trees, they relate to animals, they relate to their environment, only because they treat them as gods, and that reflects in their painting. Bhaju Shyam, who is a Padma Shri awardee and a good painter, is a friend of mine who keeps telling me that don't differentiate between your lifestyle and your art. If that is so, then you are one with it. The second thing I want to say in terms of literature, I have been talking to Mahadev Topo and people like Jacinta and many others. They are saying that our literature is also different from the mainstream literature, in the sense that Jal, Jangal and Jameen is our main issue, and in our view, the development should be considering the protection of environment, the protection of our heritage and tradition, and what you call as development, urban sense, is not our kind of development. So that way, both in their painting style, their music style, their style of writing, their way of looking at people and the world is very different. I think a meaningful interaction takes place only when you appreciate this fact and then give them space in your art forms.
Unfortunately, today Jangar's village house is in a bad shape. There are many new claimants to this relic, but the village only has a poor statue of Jangar and a completely ruined house. Nevertheless, the village has any number of artists, and Gond art has even begun to leave its mark on Bhil art. The success of Gond art has turned it into an industry which is perhaps also corrupting the world of the other styles and artists. But Jangar Kalam is very much alive, giving new dimensions to contemporary art.
पहली सुमरों का है माता पिता गुरु गोविंद लाल हाय तिलक 33 कोट के देता ला हो हाय बड़े देव बुढ़ादे छत्रपति देता कहते भाई तुम्हारे सुमरी ने कहते देता कहा थे भैया देखो आज कहा थे भाई धरती पृथ्वी रे, 8 खंड धरती 9 खंड पृथ्वी 1.25 लाख वनस्पति कहे बनाए देता। जेमा जो है कहा थे भाई 80 लाख 84 यो नील पैदा करे है देवता मोर। कहा थे भाई अन्न पानी कहा थे फल फूल सब खिलाने बनाए देवता मोर। कहा थे भाई कहा थे देखो कहे 52 गढ़ के देवी देवता। ओ गोर राजा जो है कहा थे भाई राज करें कहा थे भाई सतयुग में। कहा थे भाई आई गढ़ तुई गढ़ देव गढ़ जवाहर गढ़ 80 गढ़ लांझी 52 गढ़ के राजा है रे। ओ कैसे राज करते संत राज गणवाना है राम। कहा था भाई भूखाला भोजन प्यासाला पानी जढ़ाला वस्त्र दई नहुर राजा। ओ बड़ा दयालु राजा रहे कहा थे भाई भूखाला भोजन देवाए प्यासाला पानी जढ़ाला वस्त्र देवाए हुन राजा।